All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to talk about scope. So a variable is only available from the inside the region it is created. This is called scope. So there's a couple of different variations of scope. You have local scope, and a variable is created inside a function belongs to the local scope of that function and can only be used inside that function. Now, global scope is a variable created in the main body of the Python code. It is a global variable and belongs to the global scope. So global variables are available from within any scope, global and local. Okay, local. Name variables. If you operate with the same variable name inside and outside of a function, Python will treat them as two separate variables. One available in the global scope outside the function, and one available in the local scope inside the function. Okay, the global keyword. If you need to create a global variable but are struck in a local scope, you can use the global keyword. Okay, the global keyword makes the variable global. All right, so let's jump into our Python notebook and make a scope notebook and then dive into some examples. All right, so let's create a notebook. So we're going to label this 17 scope. All right, so let's do new Python 3 notebook, and we'll do 17, and we'll do scope. Okay, now what we're going to talk about first is local scope. So let's comment that out. We'll call this local scope. Okay, and again, this is important to understand because what you're going to do is this is only going to run inside of your function. Okay, now the global scope is cool because what you can do, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit, but I'm just excited. So let's do def my function, my func, and then add a colon there, and we'll do x equals 300, and then let's print x, and then call my function. So we'll do, okay, my function, and there you go. Let's run that, and we should have 300. We do. Beautiful. Okay, now let's do a function inside a function. As explained in the above example, the variable x is not available outside the function, but it is available for any function inside the function. Okay, so the local variable can be accessed from a function within the function. Okay, because we're inside that function. Okay, again, that's a tongue twister, but let's do this. So we're just going to add to this code. So we'll do, we'll keep this right here. We'll have x equals 300, and we're just going to add a function. So we'll do def my inner func, okay, and then add the colon, we'll print x, and then below that, we're going to call that function. So we'll do my inner function right there, and then let's run it. Okay, so indent error. Okay, so my inner function is not defined. Okay. There we go. So that's just a syntax error that I had. So remember to always be writing the syntax correctly so that you don't run into these bugs that I'm experiencing, which is really not a bug, just a syntax error. Okay. Now let's talk about global scope. Okay, so let's go to another new block of code here. We'll comment this out, global scope, okay? And a variable created in the main body of the Python code is a global variable and belongs to the global scope. Global variables are available from within any scope, global and local. Okay, a variable created outside of a function is global and can be used by anyone. So the idea of the global scope, and I was kind of going into this when I was talking about local scope, is the power of global scope. Okay, basically it's this: you can create a variable and you can use it within anywhere in your code. Okay, so let's use a website for an example. Okay, and I compare this to if you were doing CSS, you would basically call a style sheet on every web page that you're using, right? and that would be a global style sheet instead of just a one-page style sheet. This is the same idea. So instead of just being able to do a local scope on one page or one function, for that example, you can do it on anything inside your code. And that means anything inside your page. So if you need to call the variables anywhere in your website, for example, you can do that. Now you do have to connect the pages to make sure that they're talking to one another. But once they are, then you're able to do that. And in this example, for sure, we'll be able to do that. So let's do that right now. Because, like I said, I really love global functions. And what I mean is global scope. So let's comment all this out up here. And then we're going to, we'll run that. Okay, and then we're going to do x equals 300. So you'll notice what we did here. Okay, so if I compare this with the local scope just from the outset, okay, we have x equals 300. We haven't written a function. We just wrote x equals 300. Now up here, we wrote the function, and then we wrote it inside of there. Again, that's local, and you have to run that in order to use it inside the function. But here, it's global, so all we did is x equals 300. And we're going to do def my func, and then we'll print x. Okay? So let's print x, and then we'll do my function, and then print x. Okay? Now, what you're going to see is invalid. Why? Let's see here. Line 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we'll look at it. Let's see here. Okay, let's call it my function then. Okay, now let's run it. I need a colon. Come on, man. There we go. So now we got 300, 300. Okay, because we printed it twice. So we ran it inside the function and then outside the function, right? So we called it here, and then we ran it here, okay? But the beautiful thing is, again, is you can run it and you don't have to be inside the function. And this is how I learned when I was learning JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is a way more picky programming language than Python. Python is easy compared to JavaScript. If I was doing this video on JavaScript, I would have 85 syntax errors. And here you've noticed I've had about 3. I absolutely love Python. And I love JavaScript too, but JavaScript is a little more picky. Python is not in this regard. And they make it extremely easy for people to learn. That's why I'm teaching you Python, okay? So now let's talk about naming variables. So if you operate with the same variable name inside and outside of a function, Python will treat them as 2 separate variables. One available in the global scope outside the function, and one available in the local scope inside the function. So the function will print the local x, and then the code will print the global x, okay? So let's run that example. So I will walk you through that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do x equals 300 again, okay? And then we'll do def my function, and we'll do a colon, x equals 200, and then we're going to print x, okay? And then we're going to do my function, we'll go back, my function, and then print x, okay? And run that. And we have 200 and 300. So the global is here, and then the local is here, okay? Very cool. Like I said, this is extremely important to understand the difference between global and local, okay? Now let's talk about global keyword. So if you need to create a global variable but are stuck in the local scope, you can use the global keyword, So what that means is if you're in the local scope of your function, for example, and you want to get out to the global, you can use the keyword, okay? So I'll show you that example, and that's kind of a workaround if you're walking into someone else's code, okay? And you can't rewrite everything for whatever reason, okay? That's a workaround. That's why they did that. So global X, okay? So we're announcing X, okay? We're saying global X equals 300, okay? And then let's do my function, and then we'll do print X, okay? Now let's run that, and we should get 300. Beautiful. Okay, now we're going to do, also use the global keyword if you want to make a change to a global variable inside a function. So if we want to change a variable, so let's say that we walk into a project and the number was supposed to be 200 instead of 300. Imagine trying to go to every line of code and change that. Or you could just change the variable and then it will change across the board. So let's do X equals 300. And then do def, my function, and we'll do colon and return, and we'll do global X, and then X equals 200. And then my function, and then print X. Whoop. And now it'll be, X will be 200 instead of 300. So let's run that, and there you go. So that is scope. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.